All right, coffee fiends. So let's talk about that morning ritual, that that steamy cup that jumpstarts your day. But what if your stomach isn't quite as enthusiastic about that coffee as you are?
Yeah, it's a dilemma for so many. Coffee is this like global obsession, right? But the acidity can really be a downer.
Yeah, literally. So
Literally.
that's where this deep dive comes in. You sent over some research on low acid coffees,
hmm
and let's just say I'm intrigued and maybe a little bit skeptical.
I understand the skepticism. This study from North Carolina A&T State University, it really puts these claims under the microscope.
Okay, so before we spill the beans on the study's findings, let's break down the science of coffee acidity. What actually makes coffee a potential stomach irritant?
Well, coffee beans naturally contain a variety of acids,
Right.
and these contribute to its complex flavor profile. One of these is guaninic acid, and that actually increases during roasting.
Wait, really? So darker roasts, which a lot of people think of as less acidic,
Mm,
could actually have more of this guaninic acid.
exactly. It's not as simple as dark roast equals low acid. Heat transforms the acids present in coffee, changing the overall balance and how our taste buds perceive them.
Wow, so there's more to it than meets the eye, or I guess the palate. And then there's this whole TDS thing I see everywhere. How does that play into acidity?
Right, TDS stands for total dissolved solids, basically everything dissolved in your cup, not
Hmm.
just the acids. A higher TDS usually means a bolder, richer tasting brew, but here's the catch. A stronger flavor can actually kind of trick our brains into perceiving a coffee as more acidic, even if the pH isn't that different.
Oh, so it's like our taste buds are playing tricks on us.
Yeah.
Interesting. So we've got all these low-acid coffees hitting the market, promising a gentler experience. Did this study find that to be true?
That's where it gets really interesting. They tested 11 popular brands
Okay.
labeled as low acid. They brewed them up according to package directions, just like you would at home, and then they measured the pH.
Okay, drum roll, please. How many actually lived up to the low-acid claim?
Out of those 11 brands, only one consistently had a pH above 5.5, which this study identified as a critical pH level.
Wow, 1 out of 11. That's that's not great. What about the rest? How acidic were they?
Most of them hovered around a pH of 5.0 to 5.2, which is pretty standard for your average cup of coffee.
So much for those claims. But why is 5.5 so important? What happens below that line?
Well, according to this research, a pH of 5.5, that's where coffee can start to become a bit harsher on our stomachs. Think potential heartburn, indigestion, those kinds of things.
Okay, so think of 5.5 as that like crucial tipping point where enjoyment might turn into, maybe I shouldn't have had that second cup.
Precisely. And this is exactly why having a standard definition for low acid is crucial. Consumers need clear information to make informed choices, especially if they're trying to avoid discomfort.
Absolutely. But if only one brand met that 5.5 threshold, then what's the solution? Should we all just switch to decaf tea?
Don't despair just yet. This study did offer some interesting takeaways. First off, they highlighted the need for a standardized method of measuring pH.
Right.
Everyone needs to be on the same page.
Right. We can't have brands using different metrics and calling everything low acid. What else? What else did they suggest?
They also stress the need for transparency in labeling. Think actual pH values displayed prominently,
Yeah.
not just vague marketing terms.
So we can make educated decisions about what we're brewing. I'm all for that. Did they offer any practical tips for us coffee lovers out there who struggle with acidity?
They did. Remember how we talked about TDS and perceived acidity?
Yeah.
Well, they found some fascinating connections there. They noticed that some of the coffees with lower TDS levels, meaning a less intense flavor, actually had higher pH levels, making them less acidic.
So a smoother, less intense cup could actually be gentler on the stomach.
That's kind of a revelation.
It really challenges those assumptions about dark roasts being the go-to for low acidity.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot more we need to uncover about how roasting impacts acidity. What a fascinating rabbit hole this is. Absolutely. And this study suggests that there's potential for roasters to experiment with different techniques, maybe targeting specific acids like that pesky quinic acid to create coffees that are both flavorful and easy on the stomach.
Now that's an innovation I can get behind. But in the meantime, what can our listeners do if they're dealing with coffee sensitivity? Are there any brewing hacks or coffee choices that might help?
There are definitely things you can try. First off, remember the study focused on brewed coffee. Cold brew, on the other hand, is naturally lower in acid.
Oh, right. Cold brew always seems to have that smoother, mellower vibe. But why is that?
It all comes down to the brewing process. Cold brew involves steeping coffee grounds in cold or room temperature water for an extended period, typically 12 hours or more. This slow cold extraction pulls out fewer acids compared to like a traditional hot brewing method.
So it's like the difference between a quick dunk in a hot tub and a leisurely
Yeah.
swim in a cool lake.
Exactly. And less heat means less extraction of those potentially irritating compounds.
So cold brew could be a good option for those with sensitive stomachs. What about the type of coffee bean itself? Does that make a difference?
It absolutely can. Arabica beans, which are known for their smoother, more nuanced flavors, generally have lower acidity than Robusta beans. So checking the label to see what type of beans are used is a good starting point.
So many factors to consider. It's like becoming a coffee detective. Any other tips to minimize acidity?
Well, brewing methods can play a role too. You might find that certain methods, like using a French press, tend to produce a less acidic cup than others.
Yeah, it's all about experimenting and finding what works best for your individual preferences and, of course, your stomach's happiness.
Couldn't agree more. This study really underscores the importance of personalized coffee experiences.
It's not just about finding a good roast anymore. It's about understanding how all these elements, from bean type to brewing method, impact flavor and our bodies, and maybe doing a little label sleuthing along the way.
Precisely. And as consumers become more aware of these nuances, it could really drive positive change in the coffee industry.
Yeah, I like where you're going with this. But speaking of change, this study did mention a critical pH of 5.5, which, if I remember correctly, only one brand consistently met. What if there was a way to take control of that ourselves?
Now that you mention it.
What if there was a way to take control of that pH level ourselves? Like right in our own kitchens?
Wouldn't that be amazing? Imagine having a little device, a coffee pH meter, that could tell you exactly how acidic your brew is.
Okay, that would be a game changer. No more guessing games or blindly trusting labels. We could be our own coffee scientists.
Exactly. You could experiment with different beans, roasts, and brewing methods and actually see how those choices impact the acidity level.
We could fine-tune our morning cup for optimal taste and stomach harmony. It'd be like having a personalized coffee lab right on the countertop.
Mm.
Do they actually make these pH meters?
You know, I haven't seen one specifically for coffee just yet, but with the way things are going, I wouldn't be surprised if someone invents one soon.
Yeah, it's a brilliant idea. I can already imagine coffee enthusiasts everywhere just geeking out over their perfect pH readings.
It really speaks to this growing desire for transparency and control over what we consume. People want to understand the science behind their food and drinks, and coffee is no exception.
And it's not just about avoiding discomfort. It's about unlocking a whole new level of coffee appreciation.
Absolutely. Imagine being able to pinpoint the exact brewing process that yields your ideal flavor profile and acidity level. The possibilities are pretty exciting.
It sounds like the future of coffee is personalized, data-driven, and maybe even a little bit scientific. Who knew?
And just think, it all started with that simple question. Is low acid coffee really low acid?
This deep dive has certainly given us a lot to ponder and maybe even experiment with in our own kitchens.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that there's always more to learn about the things we love, even something as seemingly simple as a cup of coffee.
I completely agree. And sometimes a little bit of skepticism and curiosity can lead to some truly fascinating discoveries.
So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep enjoying your coffee one delicious and hopefully stomach-friendly cup at a time.